this is Josh.
And I'm Mike.
And today you're watching Must See Before You Die, and we're going to review one of my all-time favorite Halloween movies. Hell, it's one of my favorite movies of all time, let alone Halloween. And that is Trick or Treat. And look, I got the shirt on, Sam.
Yeah, Sam.
He's become a Halloween icon, hasn't he, Mike?
Yeah, I just recently went to Spirit Halloween, and I could not believe how much Sam merchandise they had in there. He's becoming the token model of kind of like the Easter Bunny. You know, he's out of Halloween now. I mean,
yes.
he's really popular.
Yes, and the creator, he actually set out to develop a character like that when he developed Sam. So, like, that was his goal, and I think he's creepy. I mean, maybe not 100% successful yet, but I mean, this movie has just grown over the years and years it's been out. It's grown more popular and more popular and more popular. And I mean, I give it credit because it was sent straight to DVD to die. So I give it credit. It's hung in there.
They're working on a part 2, right?
Huh?
And they're working on a part 2 now, finally.
I saw that part 2 is in development, and I hope that it does 4 original stories. The only story I would this gets into spoilers. Of course, this is all spoilers. Of course, we're going to say that.
Spoiler alert.
All spoilers. But the only character that I think they should go back and check on, maybe 2, but definitely they should check on Principal Wilkins' son, Billy.
Yeah.
15 years later and see where he's at.
Yep.
So that's the only character I think they should revisit. But we can talk more about that later. But let's get into the movie, Mike.
Yes, sir. Go ahead and get us started
so
here.
The movie starts off with like a whole it's like you're reading a comic book, right, Mike? It's got like all these comic book pages, and it goes through and kind of labels the main characters. You have Lori is one of the main characters. She's in a story. You got the principal, Stephen Wilkins. You have Rhonda. You have Old Man Krieg. And I can't remember if it named the other kids with Rhonda, but it definitely did labeled Rhonda for sure. She's a main character. So this movie, of course, is set on Halloween night. It's all Halloween night. It all takes place before midnight. Because the Trick or Treat and the movie has a set of rules, which we will go over later. But as a set of rules,
it's in Warren Valley, Ohio, too.
Right, it's in Warren Valley, Ohio. It has a set of rules, and all the rules apply until midnight. So if you disobey any of those rules before midnight, things could happen to you, or you're going to get a visit from a main character. His name is Sam. So we'll talk about him more too. So, but this movie is really cool because it is 4 to 5 stories, depending on what you count. But it says 4 stories at the beginning of the movie, but it kind of has 5. But the beginning of the movie is actually the end of the movie.
Yeah, and that's one thing I want to warn everybody. So, you know, we said it's a spoiler alert, and I'm not going to jump to the very end at the beginning, but as you watch this movie, pay close attention. This is one of those that if you just keep letting it run and you go get popcorn and drink and you're gone for 5, 7, 8 minutes, you may miss something that's going to take place later on. And that's what's cool about going back and watching this multiple times, the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 10th time, is you pick up on these other little scenes in the movie that play off, because all 4 or 5 of these stories are kind of happening very similar in time, and they connect with each other.
Yeah,
and that's
all
what's
on
awesome
Halloween
about the
night.
movie.
Right, all on Halloween night. That's what's great about it. And this town really gets into Halloween. It's a big party. Everybody dresses up. Everybody follows the Halloween rules for the most part. And, you know, they pay a lot of respect to the Halloween spirit in this town, don't they, Mike?
Yes.
So, you have, like I said, you have the rules, but like the beginning is the end. So you start out with a character named Emma and her boyfriend or husband.
You don't know that till the very end, though, that is the end. So that's what's so cool about this movie.
Right. You don't know this is the end of the movie till the end. Right. So you see, you scroll up and you see a girl walking across the street and a car almost hits her, like right away. and like these girls are all in there and they're laughing and they just take off. They slam on their brakes and then they take off. And you see a girl wailing a wagon with a lit pumpkin in it, and she goes. And then you see they go on Emma and Henry, and she's like, "Oh, I want to, like I want to take all these decorations down because they have a ton of decorations up." And she's like, "I want to take these decorations." And she's like, "I'm gonna blow up this jack-o'-lantern." And her husband's like, "No, don't do it because it's And she's like, "Why?" And he's like, "Tradition." And this is before midnight, like just before midnight, like literally.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, "Oh, I hate Halloween." She says, "I hate Halloween."
Yeah.
And she blows up the jack-o'-lantern, and her husband says, "Oh, I want to," she's like, "I'm going to go to bed." And he's like, "No, let's put the tape on." So they watch this tape to get going. It was, what did it say? Nature show or something?
Nature shows.
Didn't that what it said? But it's like a porno.
And apparently
porno like watching that. And so she starts taking everything down, and then you see she like looks across the street, and there's this guy with like a white mask, and it looks kind of like Michael Myers' mask in a way, a little
pretty
bit.
Spooky looking mask.
Right, and he's got a hood on, and he's just standing there, tall, thin guy, and she's like looking at him like, because this guy's just staring at her.
He's not moving.
She's like, "What?" And then all of a sudden a car comes up and he's like, "Oh man, I thought you guys were good. I thought you guys were taking forever. You thought you'd never show up." So he picks him up and they take off, and she's like, "Oh, okay." So that was like a fake out at the very beginning. And then she's taking these cloths off that were fake ghosts. And you think every time she takes a cloth off, something's going to get her because there's something watching her, right, Mike?
Yeah, that's another great thing at the beginning of this movie is you see the point of view from the Sam character. And he's like looking through something that kind of reminds you of the old Halloween original movie and some of the Friday the 13th.
We don't know anything about a Sam character technically yet.
No.
But you see somebody is watching her. And so she's taking all these sheets off, and every one they're kind of like making it like it could be something jumping out at her, especially the last one. You think, "Oh man, something." Mm-hmm. But then she's putting there, and then she goes into these arms and legs that are hanging from the tree. She hits them. And then all of a sudden, there's these trick-or-treaters kind of walking by. 3 clowns, they'll come up later. And she like goes to put the sheets in the box, and all of a sudden this thing jumps out at her, wraps her in the sheet. She falls outside of the gate, and these guys are like looking at her, these kids, and all of a sudden you see this blood just squirt everywhere inside this sheet, right, Mike?
Yeah, you can't see what's going on inside the sheet.
No.
But you see blood everywhere.
Right.
And those clowns are kind of looking at it, and they take off.
Right, they run. So it pans to later. Her husband wakes up, the video's going, and he's like, "Where is she?" He goes outside, he's looking, he's calling her name, Emma, and you see this arm and leg hanging from the tree, and it looked like the arm and leg that was hanging from the tree when she was there. But I noticed the arm had a wedding ring on it.
Had a diamond.
And the blood was just dripping off of this thing.
Yep.
And so he like looking at that, then all of a sudden he turns around, takes the sheet off, and it's her head on this pike, this stick, and Sam's weapon of choice, like a lollipop, is stuck in her mouth.
Yep.
So, and then that's how it starts.
Yep.
Right. And I think that's when they go to the comic book thing, actually, if I remember right. So I kind of
that kind of plays first, and then they show the comic book scenes and the other stories that's getting ready to take place.
Right. So that's where I got those out of order. But just flip them. And I thought it was a great setup for a movie. I thought it was a great, it set the tone early. Like, it ain't playing around. So
it didn't go with opening credits first and went straight into a story. And then after that first story, then it did the actors, directors, and all that kind of stuff.
Right. So in
that one, Emma died, and the husband Henry was still alive.
Right, because he followed the rules of Halloween.
That's right.
Right.
Do you want to go through the rules? I forgot to type them up to put them in there. Do you want to go through all the rules real quick?
You have them all written down?
Okay.
Do you have them handy?
I don't.
I can remember some of them. I sent them I sent them to our producer. I don't know where they're at, but
I'll edit this later on. Send me that list again, and I will when I go back
Okay,
and
I
put
can
this together
remember
for
some
Friday.
of them, Mike. So let's go through some of them.
Okay.
It is always wear a costume. Never blow out your jack-o'-lantern until Halloween's over. Never, always hand out candy. Always check your candy. And what was the last one? Oh, always respect the dead.
Oh, okay.
I think those are the quintessential 5. And if you when you watch this movie, all of those come into play really in this movie. So the next one is so I can't go through and just tell you all that, but through these different scenes, you see other characters in other stories in these scenes.
Well, they're having a big party, a big Halloween costume party throughout the whole town. So you're seeing characters walk in and out all the time.
That's right. And so now they go up to these I'm just saying, these hot chicks picking out these these sexy Halloween costumes, and changing and trying them on. And they're talking about, it's one of them's first time and blah, blah, blah. And she's nervous. And they're talking about, we can just get, remember that time when we met up with sailors and we ended up with sailors or whatever. And then there's talking. And also I want to tell this thing. You see this little kid being a peeping Tom in these girls. That little kid is the kid that played Sam in the suit. So there's a little.
I read that. And they also said that they wanted him to, a kid to play that role of Sam because kids are kind of clumsy and don't walk,
right.
All the
they
time,
wanted the way, they wanted the way a child moved to play Sam. Yep. So they, these women, they come out, and they're all dressed sexy and stuff. And they're like, come out of here, Lauren, or whatever. And she's the main character. And she comes out and she's in a Red Riding outfit, which is very cool. Because later in the story, it's all going to make sense.
Right.
She's in a Red Riding outfit. And her older sister is telling her, hey, don't be scared. We'll find somebody for you. It's fine. And it's your first time, blah, blah, blah. We're going to have a party. Well, they go outside and end up meeting these guys from the news station, right away, these hot chicks, and they get with them. And then Laura's like, I'll stay behind. I got this. I'll find somebody to bring to this party. Cause they're having a party, out in the woods somewhere. And so they're all finding dates. And so she says, I'm going to hold back at this town party and try to find somebody. And she's just walking around and trying to find somebody. But you think they're all talking about this girl, having sex, Laura.
Yeah, she's going to lose her virginity.
She's going to lose her virginity at this party. That's the big angle that they're leading up to. Right, Mike?
Yeah.
Okay. So the next one is Charlie. They go to this character named Charlie, who played Thurman Merman in Bad Santa, which is really funny. But he was knocking all these jack-o'-lanterns over, Mike.
I thought the next story was Principal Wilkins.
Right. He's that Charlie.
Okay. Yeah. He's the kid. Yeah.
Right. So Charlie's knocking all these jack-o'-lanterns over, and that's breaking a rule. I mean, you're taking out all these jack-o'-lanterns. And so he goes up to Principal Wilkins' door, and it says, please take one candy. Well, this kid, he's a bigger kid. He takes a whole big handful and puts it in his bag, and Principal Wilkins catches him and says, hey, man, you're only supposed to take one. And he's like, sit down here next to me. And what happens next, Mike?
So the kid sits down next to him, and he starts telling him these, a life story with him. And the kid's sitting there just constantly eating these candy bars left and right.
The ones he just took out of Principal Wilkins' dish.
Right. He took them out of the principal's dish, and all the other kids have been getting them too the whole night. But he's sitting there just eating them. And then all of a sudden, he just starts vomiting up this. At first, it looks like chocolate, and then it turns into blood, and it's pretty darn gross.
Yeah.
It's pretty sick. And he's just projectile vomiting blood and candy bars out. I mean, it's pretty nasty.
It liquefied his insides or something.
Yeah, and then the principal, picks him up and carries him inside, and as he carries him inside, I don't. I'll talk about the backyard in a second, but there's some other kids come up on the door and start ringing the bell for like, hey, what's, a trick or treat. Well, he's got blood all over his white shirt or light colored shirt. He's the principal of the school. All these kids go to his school, and he goes back out and kind of lets them he gives them a piece of candy each. But one of the kids watching this looks down at the ground and sees all this blood and sees it on his shirt and sees the tracks where he drugged the kid inside the house.
Right.
And he's thinking to himself, probably, something's awful odd about
also,
this.
these three kids they're part of another story coming
right.
up. And this is the first time you see Sam.
Yep.
Sam is there. He takes a piece of candy and leaves. This is the first time you see Sam.
Yep.
So
and y'all seen Sam before. You'll see it in the thumbnail of this. He's kind of wearing his jumpsuit orange thing with the burlap sack over his head. Do you have a picture of him, or do you have a NECA figure there, Josh?
Yeah, I have a NECA figure.
I mean, he's like the new face of Halloween.
Yeah, I love this figure. I mean, we'll do a video about our NECA figures at some point, but I love this figure. And yeah, Sam is a very cool. It's simple, but works so well.
Yep. So then you want to go to the backyard. I mean, so the principal goes to the backyard. He's got this pre-dug 6-foot, hole. There's already another body in there as well, right?
Yes.
If I recall.
I mean, it could be more than one.
I don't know who else is in there, but and then you see him, the kid that's supposed to be dead is like, getting up and stuff like that, and he's kicking him. And this is kind of a dark comedy / horror movie, because there's some funny stuff in this movie as well.
Right. Well, at first the dog's barking while he's trying to bury it. And the neighbor's old man Creedy's dog is barking, so he like rips off a finger of one of these victims, throws it to the dog so he stops barking, and then the neighbor's like, "What are you doing over there?" He goes, "It stinks out here." And then when he's trying to bury him, his son is in the second floor going, "Daddy, Dad," like really loud. He's like, "Daddy."
His kid is obnoxious.
And then the dad, Principal Stephen Wilkins is like, "Daddy, why do you do this? Daddy, why do this? Daddy, why isn't Mom here anymore?" So apparently, the principal at one point killed his wife. Maybe that was who was in the hole. I don't know.
Did you notice that in the yard? There's all these like these new trees planted.
No.
And at the end, after he finally fills the hole back up towards the end of the movie, or at the end of it, and he puts water on the thing, it's a brand new tree. But if you look in the background, there's a bunch of new little trees planted everywhere.
Oh, so I did not see that, Mike.
Yeah, next time you go back and watch it, between the line between his house and the next door neighbor's house, there's a bunch of other new trees as well that's been planted. So he's probably been doing this for every other year. Every year he's doing this.
Serial killer.
Yeah, he's a serial killer.
You'll find out that later too, more about him. So so he goes inside. Oh, and the son yells from the top window, "Don't forget to help me with the eyes." And
he's wanting to do a jack-o'-lantern. He's like, "Dad, when are we going to do the jack-o'-lantern?"
So Wilkins comes in and he grabs a big butcher knife, like a Michael Myers butcher knife, and he leads his son down in the basement, and he takes his son's head from the back, and all of a sudden he stabs, and you hear, and you're like, "Oh God, he killed his son." That's what I thought. When I first saw it a long time ago, I thought he murdered his son, Billy. But then you look and his son's there, and you see he actually stabbed Charlie's head. They decapitated Charlie, and his head's downstairs. And his son said, "Don't forget to help me with the eyes." And he looked all like freaking Jeffrey Dahmer face. And
early he said something about, "We got to make a really good smile on him" or something. So, yeah, I mean, the whole time I'm thinking they're doing a jack-o'-lantern in the basement, and I had no clue that kid's head was going to be on the platter.
So evidently, this kid Billy is used to this. I mean, he's part of it with his dad. So, Billy is going to be, he's probably going to take over the family business. That's what I think. But so I mean, that's a good cover. Unassuming principal, and you're a serial killer. Like no one's going to think it's you. Mm-mm. So, but yeah, so then after that story, we forgot to mention an important part. Before he goes inside to help his son, he's walking on his porch, and all of a sudden his neighbor Creedy was banging on his window from inside his house, Creedy's house, he's like, "Help me, Wilkins! Help me!" And Wilkins is like, "Screw you!" And all of a sudden, something jumps on Creedy inside,
Yeah.
and you don't know what it is. And now that's a later story. That's not now.
Right.
So you see little glimpses of stories, and then after that, they go to the story about Rhonda and these other kids. And the other kids, there's this blonde girl dressed up as an angel, which is definitely, she should have been dressed up as a devil. Her name is Macy. She's like the leader of this group. Typical like bad girl, like that's a mean girl in school, you know, like blonde.
She's the bully. She's the popular blonde with this on everybody else.
Right. And then she's kind of got like this other guy who's kind of cool. He looks like he might be like a jock type. I don't know. But his name's Schrader. And he kind of has a little bit of sympathy for this Rhonda, but he still goes along with it. So he's still a jerk in my book. And then you have Sarah, who's a taller girl who has braces. And then you have a guy that's dressed up as a pirate. His name's Chip. He's the guy that had that was wondering about his principal why there was this blood trail dragged into his house. But they've been collecting all these jack-o'-lanterns, and they needed 8 of them, I think it was. And so they've been collecting them, and then they went to Rhonda, and I think
she had a bunch in her yard.
I think they called her. This isn't PC, but I think they called her a retard. Right. So they were making fun of her. They wanted to make fun of her because she's different. Not that she was special.
But the whole time, the boy and the older boy in it's trying to be like the hero. He's like,
right,
let's don't be that way. Let's just see if she'd want to go. And
okay. Yeah, you're right. And he was trying to say, oh man, did you do all these pumpkins? I mean, this girl had like 50 pumpkins carved, dude.
Yeah.
What would they call her? Idiot. I think they called her an idiot savant or something like that. I don't know what the wording was. It wasn't good. But so this girl was very talented, very smart, but just about her stuff, not about like maybe like what's popular at school or who could throw a baseball or a basketball or a football, but she knew her stuff. You know what I mean? In which she was really loved Halloween, and she knew a lot about Halloween. So they were taking all these pumpkins to this rock quarry, right, Mike? Was it?
Yep, it was a rock quarry.
And so they started telling the story. Macy did. If I'm missing something, tell me, Mike. But
no, go ahead. You're on it.
Okay, so Macy starts telling the story about how there was a long time ago. I don't know how long ago from this movie. Was it 30 years ago? 40? I don't know when it was. But they started telling a story. Well, there's this elevator that takes you from the top to the bottom, but it only could fit 3 people in it.
Right.
So they had to wait, and they went down. They all went down this, but she's telling this story about how all the parents in this town, there was like these kids that were demented or whatever, but I don't think they were.
They called it a special bus with special students on it.
But they said the kids were demented and whatever, but it was just because they were special needs, and back in the day, people were like ashamed that their kids had special needs. They did. They were. And they treated them accordingly, and that's horrible. But so these kids all rode that bus. They were all dressed up for Halloween, and they told the story of
they were all chained. They were all chained together in the bus. They were handcuffed and chained.
The parents paid this bus. They all got their money together. All the parents of all these children got this plan to pay this bus driver off to basically kill all these children, 8 of them, and so he pulls up to the rock quarry in this bus, and he gets out, gives them all candy, make sure they're all tightened. Well, this one kid ends up in a vampire costume, ends up getting out of his cuffs and stuff, and he gets in the driver's seat, and he's messing with it and hitting the thing, and the bus driver tries to run up, but like this other guy in a creepy clown freaking costume trips him, and so they end up going over the cliff with the driver, and the bus sinking, and then you see the driver getting out, and they said no one's ever seen the driver again or heard from him again after that, but he did survive, and all the kids ended up dying.
And you see a couple masks are floating up from the water where they had
the purpose of bringing these pumpkins down here was to like I don't know, like heal the dead or something, maybe, because it was for the 8 victims, so 8 jack-o'-lanterns with lights. So they go down, they're walking Chip, the pirate kid, and Rhonda, and they're walking down after the other kids already went down. And then all of a sudden, you see like the other kids' pumpkins go out. 3 pumpkins go out, and they're screaming. And they're like, "Where?" Rhonda and Chip are like, "Where'd they go?" And so Rhonda walks up to the edge, and you see these masks floating up, and you do see the school bus,
Yep.
which is legit. And you're
Yep.
like, "Whoa!" And Rhonda reaches for one of these masks, and all of a sudden, something grabs her leg, and she's like, "Ah!" And these people come up with these chains on and coming after her, and she runs, and then all of a sudden she sees Chip laying on the ground with like guts and stuff hanging out, and something's eating on him, and she's like running and running, and she like goes to this cliff, and she like, oh well, she drops her glasses to begin with, and one of those things steps on it, breaks her freaking glasses, she can't see nothing, and she falls backwards in this thing, and she's freaking out, and all of a sudden you realize that these 4 kids played a freaking joke on her, and really mean, scared her to death. That one guy, Schrader, feels really bad. He's like, "It's not funny, blah, blah, blah." And all of a sudden, he's like consoling her, but then Sarah, Chip, and Macy go over to take care of the pumpkins, and they're just kicking them over, and then Macy kicks the last one over, and they said, "You shouldn't do that," and she said, "I don't care." She like kicks it, and then all of a sudden they start hearing stuff like,
you hear chains
and like people whispering, and they're like, "What the heck?" And then you go back to Rhonda and Schrader, and all of a sudden you hear Macy, Chip, and Sarah just start screaming, and then Schrader's like, "It's not funny, it's not funny," and they're like, "No, we gotta go, it's serious." And all of a sudden, before you know it, they're like running, but then you see Rhonda is in the elevator, and she's got the key, and the door's shut, and they're all like, oh, and the brace girl trips over. She has chains on her because she had her chain stuck on a rock, and she fell down, and they ended up pulling her chains, killing her, ripping her to shreds. These eight zombie kids.
Yep.
And then they're like, "Oh, and they're like, "Help us!" And then Rhonda's like, "Okay, whoops, up," and she goes up, and she don't feel bad about it. She's got her one lit pumpkin. That's hers. It's the only one left. She goes up. The kids are looking, say, "Don't do this." And then all of a sudden, you just hear the kids getting ripped apart. Like literally just ripped apart limb by limb. You hear like whoosh, just annihilated by these zombie ghosts or whatever they are.
Yeah.
And then you see Rhonda walking she puts her witch hat on that was left up there, and she grabs her wagon with her lit pumpkin. You see Sam in a drain and a drainage pipe, and he's just sitting there, and she looks right at him. He looks at her. He doesn't do a thing to her because she followed the rules and had her pumpkin stayed lit. So you see him walking over to look at the carnage. Yep. But so there's that. And what is the next story there, Mike?
The next story would be I would take it would be the girls.
We might have skipped a little part, but there's a mystery man in black in the street.
Yeah, there's a mystery man in black. It's got kind of like a black mask on and a big cape on, and he's killing people.
He killed he killed a woman. He bit her. He's a vampire.
Right.
He bit her and killed her, and she was trying to ask for help, but like she looked over and all these people had like fake wounds on them, so they weren't even believing her. They thought she was drunk. She actually ran into Emma and Henry, and they were like, she's just drunk.
Right.
So he ended up killing her, and Lori is walking through the streets, and all of a sudden, the man in black, the vampire guy, he's got eyes on Lori now.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh crap, Lori is in trouble.
Yeah.
Lori's in trouble here. So she takes off to the party. Her sister called her and said, "Hey, we have someone for you. He's really cool." Turns out it's like this big fat guy in a freaking baby costume. Now I was watching this other movie that actually said he actually played a ghost baby in 13 Ghosts.
Oh,
and he played a baby in this movie. Yeah. So it was kind of funny, but so they're like, she's like, well, and he goes, her sister's like, well, he's nice, and she's like, nice. What is he? He has no arm or something? It was funny. So yeah, it was funny, and she's like, just get here, and then you see, another important part we forgot about when the kids were getting ready to go down into they heard wolves howling.
Yeah.
And Rhonda said, werewolves. I mean, she knew exactly what it was.
Yep.
Also, I forgot to say, Rhonda knows all about like the history of Halloween. She said she was telling the kids about Samhain, which was predated Christianity. It was like led into Halloween. And she like knew all about all that, about the pagan rituals. And she knew that like this was like the day where the veil between life and death was thin, and like the dead could like roam the earth. That's what
Yep.
Samhain was. So I wanted to add that little bit in. But so we're at the girls, and she's walking to this party. Lori is, and all of a sudden she's hearing stuff, and she's by herself. And then you all of a sudden you see the man in black, and he gets behind her, and he says, my, what? Oh wait, what does he say? Does he say? He says something like Little Red Riding Hood.
Yeah, he says some kind of little line of Red
Does he
Riding
say
Hood,
what big eyes you have or something?
and then all of a sudden you see his big teeth. You know, he's got these pointed fangs,
Yeah,
and he reaches in behind her neck, and you know, you're thinking he's getting ready to bite her, and it's over for her.
he does bite her,
Yeah, she starts bleeding,
and she's screaming, and then you're like, oh man, and then it cuts to the party of all the girls, and yeah,
and then all of a sudden his body falls out of the
no,
like
a red cape, the red cape falls down, and you think it's Laura,
right.
and you're like, oh crap, this vampire guy is gonna run amok on all these girls out here, you know. And all of a sudden they go over to it and they lift it up, and it's him, and he's like, help me, and they lift up his mask, and it's Principal Wilkins is this murderer. So he did murdering of children, and then he was murdering women in town as a vampire character.
Right.
He's not a real vampire. They actually take his teeth off and fling them. And then all of a sudden you see Laura walk up, and she's got wild hair, but she has like that blood coming down. And they're like, what took you so long? Her sister did. And blah, blah, blah. And they said, oh, you know, it took some time, but I found him. And then like the principal's looking, and you realize all the men that were there are dead. They're all dead. They're all just laying there dead. Throats ripped out. They're just dead. All of them.
Well, before you saw that, you kind of think that they're getting ready to have some kind of, excuse my language, a big orgy or something, because all of them were together at one time together, partying all out in the wild together. And then all of a sudden at this point, like you said, you look around, they're all dead. And they're still like talking her up the whole time about, you know, when are you getting ready? Are you getting ready to do it? And all this, like she's getting ready to lose her virginity.
Right.
And then tell the story, what happens, what really happens.
And then you realize it's not virginity she's losing. It's her first kill as a werewolf. And these things are cool. So she
reminds me of American Werewolf in London. How great
I love the way these werewolves all and I love the way they flip the script, because usually the woman is like, you think the woman's in danger. She can't, you know, like the man is going to overpower. Well, in this case, the women are the strong ones, and they totally destroyed the men. They use their sexuality to lure them in, and then their strength and power as werewolves to totally kill them.
And one thing we missed earlier, that the kids go up to a house and it's a bunch of teachers having a party, and the lady that answers the door, you know, they're having all kinds of crazy parties, drinking and partying going on behind it. But at this scene right now that you're talking about, I read this again. I'll have to go back and remember seeing it. But the teacher that was half drunk at the door, she's in the background when all this goes on at the party.
Well, because I seen the gym teacher was at that party because he had that hot dog costume on, and he was dead too. They were rolling him. So
the lady,
that woman was a werewolf as well.
She's part of the werewolves as well.
Right. So that was cool. I never noticed that before, Mike. So that was really cool to see. And so I love the transformation. So how they do it is they start becoming it, like their eyes and their teeth grow, and they just like slit their skin, or they rip it right off, and underneath they're the werewolves.
Yeah.
And like, so they basically just rip their skin off. Oh, and I love that part where that girl takes her fingernail and cuts that girl's back, and she just like rips the whole thing off. Yeah. That was awesome.
And then the principal had like a compound fractured leg, so he couldn't get up and run. He was in trouble.
His leg was broke. So she got on him, and she was like, my, what big eyes you have. Like she says the same thing to him. And, you know, because his eyes are wide open because he can't believe what's going on right now. And she goes up like, and like her whole mouth like is like just fangs. And then she goes down and just starts ripping his throat out. And
Yep.
then you see all the werewolves transform are just eating these guys up.
Yep.
And Sam is sitting on a log, just wiggling his legs, loving it, isn't he, Mike?
Yeah.
So Sam is overseeing that too. He loves it. So, and so that's that. That story is over. Now we're on to the last story, Mike.
Yep.
Okay, do you
I mean,
want to?
you're on a roll. You're on a roll, Josh. Man, keep rolling with it. I mean,
Okay. Well, the last story, the last story is with Old Man Creedy. So, what is the first which we already saw him once at the,
yeah, he's the next door neighbor of the serial killer.
Of the serial killer, yes. So, all of a sudden, these kids, I don't know why you'd go up to this house. The house, first of all, has no decorations. Second of all, there's no lights on. So, when I was a kid, those houses you skipped. You didn't go to them.
They didn't have a light on. You didn't go to it.
Or decorations. You didn't go. Right, Mike?
Yep. And they show him at the very beginning.
We don't want to participate.
He's in the house half drunk. He's got a bunch of empty bottles in the house.
Yeah, the guy's drunk.
He's burning pictures, and that will come back at the end to kind of.
So these kids ring the doorbell, and they're like, trick or treat, and he opens the door, and all of a sudden you see these two green eyes, and you're like, what the frick is this? And it's his dog. He put a little costume on his dog with these green eyes, and it looked like a monster, and these kids took off. And it was the same three kids dressed as clowns that ran away from Emma when she was killed at the beginning.
Yep.
So they came back into it. This must have been after that. They were walking down the road after they got scared from his house, and that's when that thing happened to Emma. So these kids are traumatized. But yeah, no. So he picks the dog up. Oh, I love you, dog. Blah blah blah. And then all this. And like you said, he's burning pictures. He's drinking heavily. The guy hates Halloween. He's watching TV. He sees the parade downtown. Ah. So this guy's kind of like the Ebenezer Scrooge of this movie.
Yep.
So he's like, I hate Halloween. Blah blah. And it's funny because like he flicks it on, and there's two cartoons on the screen. One was the original short called Season's Greetings that had Sam in it. There's a little flash of it. Then the next one was a female werewolf cartoon, which played into the last one.
Right.
Then I don't know what the next thing was that he put it on Ron Popeil's Set It and Forget It infomercial. My wife got a kick out of that because she said as a kid, her mom and dad, for whatever reason, always watched that infomercial. So we laughed about that. Set It and Forget It. So he landed on that, but then all that stuff happened, like we said earlier, with the dog went outside and was looking at the neighbor. We don't really have to go into that. He went outside and said, the one thing he did say was, tell your kid to stay off my yard.
Yep.
Because Sam is at Old Man Creedy's house. He thought it was Billy.
Right.
But it wasn't. So he goes to the window, and all of a sudden this egg hits the glass. And he's like, what the heck? Blah, blah, blah. And then he goes outside with a baseball bat, and all of a sudden, there's like 50 or 60 jack-o'-lanterns in his yard. And the guy had no decorations. And he's like, what the? And all of a sudden, he's like, goes to hit one, and then he stops because he hears something in his house.
Yeah, his dog is barking at something in the house.
Yeah, the dog. So, and the dog ends up going upstairs. He puts the bat down, grabs his double-barrel shotgun, with more than 2 shells, which are smart of him. He grabbed a bunch of shells, put them in his coat pocket. Oh, I want to remind you, this guy's in his pajamas, a robe, and house slippers, too. So he goes upstairs. All of a sudden, you hear his dog. He's calling for his dog, Spike, Spike. And all of a sudden, you hear the dog go, like it got killed. So the dog's dead. They don't ever show the dog dead, but you assume he died. He goes into this room. He's looking. There's something underneath this bed going like this, underneath the sheets. And he's like, I got this. He lifts it up. It's like a little like electronic hand. Like it looked like a mummy hand or something, right, Mike?
Mm-hmm.
What happens next?
Well, he's looking around, and I hope I didn't mess this up, but he's looking around for everything. And all of a sudden, up underneath the bed, he gets cut at his ankles by Sam, who's got a candy bar with a razor blade in the end of it.
Yes.
And
you see that in the next scene.
Huh?
You see that more prominently in the next scene because he pulls that candy bar out and he peels it down more, and you see the exposed candy bar with the razor blade in it.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention one thing before we go any further. when he scares those kids away, he brings in the bags of candy. And when he sits down, he takes one of the candy bars out. Old Man Creedy does, and takes a big bite out of it. And he's like, ugh, and like throws it away. That's one of the principal's candy bars.
Yeah.
See, because it's poison. And he was like, ugh, this tastes sick. And he like throws it away. I mean, he doesn't know that. But that was like a little thing in the movie as well. But so, yeah. So he got his ankle cut. Oh my God, dude. I hate that. And then he's like walking. He's like, oh. And dude, he looks up and like I don't know if this happened before his ankle got cut or what, but that's what made him look, I think, because the whole room had trick or treat.
Give me something
blood
good
all over it.
Yep. Give me something good to eat.
Right. And then this pumpkin explodes and has a huge fire come out of it, just like that. Right, Mike?
Yep.
And it's like, and he shoots that pumpkin with his shotgun. And so that put out that pumpkin. And he goes over to he's like, and he like walks over to the stairs. Sam put out a bunch of candy and stuff. And so he trips down the stairs, but also he put out a bunch of glass.
Yes, he's got glass all in his hands. He can't do anything. His hands are
tore up. He's trying to like open the door because he has like 50 million locks on his doors. So he's trying to undo them, but his hands are all like mangled from this glass. And all of a sudden, from behind him, when he's trying to do his door, you see it like fuzzy, but Sam is like crawling on the ceiling.
That's freaky.
And it just jumps on him. Oh, I love that effect, Mike. I love that.
That's kind of back when The Ring and The Ring was popular, and all the movies that had people walking on the ceilings and stuff. That was pretty freaky.
Yeah. So he does that, and they fight. He ends up tearing Sam's mask off, and it's a pumpkin. His head is like a pumpkin, a little pumpkin devil. And he ends up biting him in the leg and stuff where he already cut him. And it's funny because Sam like looks up and all of a sudden there's that double barrel shotgun right in Sam's face. And he like, boom, pulls the trigger. Sam goes flying across the room. He gets up. He goes over, blasts him in the chest. You see all this like pumpkin guts come out. Like it's not real blood and guts. It's like the inside of a pumpkin.
Like pumpkin seeds and all that stringy stuff.
Yeah. And then he shoots him again and blows his hand off. And he's like, oh, man, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden he's standing there. And what happens next, Mike?
That's when he looks down the floor and the hand comes crawling across the floor.
It stabs him in the foot with that razor blade candy bar.
That's right.
And he's like, ah. And then all of a sudden you see that hand. He's on the floor. And you see that hand come over and tap on Sam. Sam wakes up. The hand comes in and like all like the pumpkin guts just go back together. And he gets up, and the guy's laying there. The gun's out of ammo, so you don't have the gun anymore. He's leaning against. He's like this. He's like, oh. And Sam reaches in his bag of treats, pulls out the now iconic lollipop pumpkin, takes a big bite out of it. And Sam still has his mask off, and he goes to stab McCready, stabs him, but there's a candy bar there. And when he pulls it out, he goes like that, and he takes it. Sam takes a bite out of it. Goes, picks his mask up, and leaves.
Yeah, so at that point, you think it's over. It's kind of like
you're like, whoa.
He got saved by a candy bar. I mean, candy bar was in his chest, and when it stabbed him in the chest, it pulled the candy bar back.
Well, I think it's because Sam thinks he followed one of the rules: always hand out candy.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think happened there. So he left. You see Sam go outside, and he's like, well, I'm done for the night. It's almost midnight. But then he notices Emma breaking one of the rules, blowing out the jack-o'-lantern. So he goes and takes care of business over there. Then you see kids knocking on the door. The old man gives out candy and like mints and stuff that old people got, not real candy, like Starlight mints and stuff. And he's all bandaged up. His head's bandaged up, and he gives candy to these kids. And he's kind of turned a new leaf. He's like, man, I got to follow these rules if I'm going to.
Have they already showed the pictures and led it back to the true story at this point?
Not yet.
Okay.
I don't think so. And then oh, no, this is when he gets another door, and all of a sudden you see like it's those 8 kids from earlier in the story that tore apart those kids. And then I think they go to the fire, because they attack him, and you go to the fire and you see that he was the bus driver. Old Man Creedy was the bus driver that killed all those 8 kids back in like the 70s or whatever.
Yeah, they got pictures of the school bus and all the kids with the mask on, the costumes on, and then he's the bus driver standing beside them. So then it comes full circle that he was the bus driver that went to kill these 8 kids. And remember, they said earlier, well, we never saw the bus driver again. Well, evidently he survived, and the whole town had kept it a secret. But then they were coming back to take their revenge on him.
Right. And even though he learned a lesson, he learned a definite lesson now because they tore him apart. He died. Yeah. And they showed it they showed that in a comic scene, actually. They didn't actually show it in real life, but they showed all the kids getting on him and his hands like up in the air, like, ah. So, and that's how the movie ends. Right, Mike?
Yeah, it's a great movie. Do you want to go through the facts real quick and then give our ratings?
Yeah, we'll do our rating. I can do our rating right now if you want.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mike. Do your rating.
So I thought it's a great movie. Every year I watch it, I think it gets better and better over time.
Right now, on a scale of pumpkins.
On a scale of pumpkins, one being
jack-o'-lanterns.
Yeah, jack-o'-lanterns. 1 not being that great, 5 being excellent. I'm going to give this one a 4, and it may be pushing to a 4.5 because it's a really good movie in my opinion. It's something that has all these stories that come together into one. It's a different type movie that you've seen at Christmas time. I mean, not Christmas time, at Halloween time. And it's just different. And I think it's unique. I like it.
Right. I'm giving it 5 jack-o'-lanterns out of 5, Mike.
What? 5 out of 5? The perfect movie?
No, yesterday I watched the movie and I looked on Facebook, and in 2009, it said, I got a message here. Sorry. It said that I watched the movie for the first time in 2009 on Facebook. I said, Trick or Treat was as good as I thought it was going to be. Rent the movie and go watch it. And that was in 2009. So I thought that was kind of cool that I was doing the research for the movie on the day that I originally watched the movie from 2009. But I give it 5 out of 5. I think it has a lot of rewatchability, Mike, because there's so much stuff that you can rewatch and try to find again. And like I said, those extra trees. I've seen this movie 20 times and never noticed that, Mike. So
yeah, next time you watch it,
I'm rewatchability.
Yep, it does. So here's some quick facts about it. The movie was supposed to come out in 2007, and Josh just said he watched it in 2009. It was pushed back to 2009 because there was some other big movies coming out around Halloween in 2007. They didn't really want it to compete against. I learned something tonight myself. I always called it Sam Hain, and that's how I thought the character got its name, Sam. And it really is. That's how it got its name, but it's really pronounced Samhain. So that's something I learned tonight. So that's something interesting. I've listened to Sam Hain, or what I thought was Sam Hain, from a Danzig album many years ago, and I thought that's how you pronounced it. It's a Celtic.
I realized how it's pronounced because Rhonda in the movie pronounced it Samhain.
Right. So Samhain also predates Christianity and the Halloween. It's a Celtic pagan holiday, a new year between summer and winter, in which they believe that the veil between the living and the dead was entangled so spirits would run free.
Yep.
The movie idea and the character of Sam all came from a short animated feature, Season's Greetings, which Josh had mentioned that earlier.
Yes.
And they got a few more facts right here popping up. Let's see. So Mrs. Henderson, who is the drunk teacher dressed as a cat, is a werewolf. She can be seen during the transformation scene, and is also in the background with a group of werewolf girls.
Right.
In one scene. The serial killer in the story, Steve Wilkins, seems to specialize in murdering children. This is one of the few horror movies where young children are shown being killed off in the story for real.
Yeah,
that's have something unique about it.
They have no problem killing children in this movie. A lot of them die.
And you already brought this up. The kid that peeks with a lollipop in his mouth, that is the person in real life, Quinn Lord, who actually played that part of Sam in the movie.
Yeah.
And total, this one came out, I don't think it went to the theaters at all. It went straight to DVD and Blu-ray, if I recall.
Right. They kept pushing it back, and they kind of put it on DVD to go die, and it didn't. It got a life of its own, and it survived all these years. And really, I mean, AMC every Halloween plays the crap out of it. So
So far it's $12.5 million on DVD and Blu-ray, but I think that's definitely going to go up.
Yeah. Well, yeah, definitely. I own the DVD. I bought the DVD years and years ago, probably 10 years ago. I bought it shortly after I watched it because I was like, I got to own that. So,
and it's a relatively, most movies are long movies nowadays, or even back when this came out in 2009. We've been talking for 50 minutes now, Josh. It's the longest we've went on one because there's so much stuff going on in this movie.
Yeah,
the whole movie is only an hour. It's only an hour and 22 minutes long.
Right. I mean, we missed a lot of stuff we probably could have said about this movie, but
we probably could have watched it live on there just as quick.
It's funny because there's other anthology movies in the horror genre, but none of them do it this good with intertwining the stories. I mean, I really like Creepshow and Creepshow 2, but none of those stories have anything to do with the other stories. Right. They're all just anthology, like one after another, stuff like that. But yeah, I think this movie does the whole mixing of the stories better than, any other movie. Now, there is another movie that's connected to this universe, and that is Krampus. And we will be reviewing that in December, right around Christmas.
One of my favorite Christmas horror movies, yes. Which once you see the Trick or Treat, and then you watch Krampus. There's a bunch of different Krampuses. You got to watch the right one, the same one that this director did. But you can tell they're the same type style.
Yep, for sure.
And yes. and Krampus is just an awesome movie. I mean, yes. For around the holidays.
Yeah. So yep. So yeah, we are. Man, this wraps up our Halloween and our first month of having the YouTube channel. I think we're doing pretty good, Mike, for our first month. And we're going to continue it. And I can't wait to review a lot more movies. I mean, I have a lot of favorites in the horror genre and different things. Probably leading up to Christmas and before that, of course, and probably late November, we're going to be just amping up a lot of horror-themed Christmas movies. And maybe we'll do a couple normal horror movies before that, one or two. But we're going to probably amp up the Christmas type stuff pretty quick.
Yeah. So be watching our videos coming out because sooner or later we'll probably come out with a short video asking you to tell us what are some of your favorite Christmas movies because we may be able to throw one or two of those in around Christmas time.
Sure.
But please like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for hanging out with us. And hey, tell us your opinion. Have you seen Trick or Treat? Have you seen Sam? What's your opinion on it? If it's been many years since you've watched it, watch it again and look for all these little details in it.
Yeah, it's great. It's great for that. Okay, guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys. See ya. See you, Mike.